Hi there. My name is Dr. Kimberly Ernest. I am a licensed psychologist, licensed professional counselor, the president of Pennsylvania Counseling Services, the founder of Live Up Counseling. And today on the How to Be Happy Hour, we are discussing the parent-child dynamic once that child becomes an adult.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Roque. I am a family-based therapist here in Lebanon, PCS, going on 12 years.
My name is Nakaya Griffin-McKinney. I am a Check and Connect mentor in the Lancaster County area, and I will be here a year in November.
My name is Sage Ruskowski. I work at the York Psych office, and I'm a forensic and mental health outpatient therapist. I started my internship here, and now I'm working full-time.
Hi, I'm Carrie Meehan. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I work at York Psych as well. And I work with the gambit of ages from 6 to 76 right now. So,
I'm Deb Thomas. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm also the clinical director of Children's Services here at Pennsylvania Counseling Services in Lebanon.
Thank you all for joining me here today. I'm super excited to have such a large panel with so many unique and diverse experiences. So I wanted to tackle this particular topic because oftentimes in our programs, we see a lot of challenges in this emerging adulthood season. There's this shift that occurs when a child becomes an adult in their own right. And sometimes that a shift occurs very suddenly when the child turns 18, but we've also seen different phases and seasons of that shift. And despite the fact that we see tons of parenting resources for children at different ages across the lifespan, it's a pretty anemic, when it's this content area, the resources are pretty anemic. And I know in supporting many of our family therapy programs, when that child is 17, 18, 19 years old, but still living at home, there's often this flavor of, what the fuck do we do? So today, I think we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that shift and that transition and then beyond. But I guess just to start, why don't we prepare more for that season? It almost feels like, we prepare for the first day of school and we prepare for them becoming an adolescent. You hear about that for years, right? But we don't talk much about that emerging adulthood phase and the way in which the relationship shifts as that child enters into their own season of adulthood.
Well, I can say that a lot of the book knowledge and 25 years as a therapist and working with families doesn't apply. None of it. None of it applies as a parent of two teenagers. I forget it. I try to use it. It doesn't work. We can prepare, but then are we prepared? And so I think you can have a lot of experience and still fall on your face.
I remember talking to a friend when I was pregnant about how can I prepare for this next season? And she looked at me and said, Kim, that's absurd as asking, how can I prepare for state prison? I was like, oh,
Pack a bag. I don't
okay. And already, the damage was done. I was pregnant. There was no way out of it. But she just said, let it go. There's no preparation. What can you do next?
Yeah.
Similar to state prison, I suppose. I don't know.
It can feel like that.
yeah, it certainly can. I think of Dr. Dan Siegel's work in Brainstorm. I think that's been the best book I've seen on emerging adulthood and even the adolescent phase, where it has some applicable, strategies and stuff. But I think to what you were saying, Deb, it's really hard to prepare because our teens and young adults really can go a variety of directions. I do feel like it's the most difficult season to go through now, having parented through every phase of life and having my own 20-somethings. I feel like that has been the most difficult, is to step back from the active parent role and to more of a mentorship role. It can be really challenging.
I think the preparation work, I only have a recent 17-month-old and obviously pregnant with my second. But I think the preparation, even as I transitioned, was the attachment thing. So I feel like because my parents were super attached to me, they didn't worry about the next transition in life. And then naturally, they were just always involved in my life. So they always had a role or a piece of it. And yes, for them, if you ask them, they probably prepared themselves to change that role. But the underlying piece of that was the attachment. And because we were solidly attached, it kind of just flowed. And that's kind of how I see it, like seeing from the first day my baby went to daycare to her now going to a different classroom that's super advanced for where she's at right now, but she's trying to get there, is I'm attached to her. She's attached to me. I rely on that attachment for so many things. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I feel like she's going to make it and she's going to be good just because at the end of the day, we're attached. So I don't know. I feel like that's what I want to do as I grow older and I have my kids go out in the world, like just focus on the attachment and everything else will kind of follow in line. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I had a similar experience because I recently went through the emerging to it into adulthood because like I'm in my mid-20s. So I just went through that, but I think it happened a little bit later because I lived at home through my entire college experience until I moved out. But I think for me, in terms of attachment though, I was codependent with my mom, like because we had gone through a lot when I was a kid. And so I think for that, I think she prepared me in a lot of ways for me to continue to rely on her and for her to continue to rely on me. And so like there was no separation at that point. Like there was never any like, oh, talk of like, you're going to be an adult, because I had just like continued to live at home, even though I had a partner at the time for like I've been with my husband now for 8 years. So like, even though he was there, he went to school far away. So like I still had my parents that like I came home and like my mom was like my best friend, like that kind of thing. So I think she just kind of prepared for me not to let that go. And so like setting the boundaries now today is so difficult just for both of us, like because she's trying to learn it too, but it was like very weird because like we just had each other my whole life, and then I'm like, well, like I moved away, like I moved out of the house, I moved to a different town, like that kind of stuff. So I think like similar in attachment, but just the wrong side of it, I guess, like the you're gonna always need me kind of side of that. But
I think that speaks to like like some of the tension and guilt and often confusion, right? And it's a time. I mean, my children are not anywhere near that season yet, but I realize that that'll come probably quicker than I anticipate in many ways, because getting to 7 and 9 happened a lot quicker than I anticipated. But even now, as we're firmly in middle childhood, like. It used to be like mom or bust. I think you used the joke yesterday, mom and not mom.
That's what my daughter called my husband and I. I'm mom and he's not mom. That's his name, not mom.
Not
True
mom.
story, yeah. Not mom.
And that was it. I mean, for so long. And then now, like, dad plays basketball better and he wrestles better and like all these different things. And it's just, even though I believe that I have cultivated a really secure attachment with my children, for me, there are times where it's confusing or I even feel rejected. And it's not intended to be rejecting. Like, my husband just knows more about basketball, right? But it creates different little blips along the way. And so I can't imagine what it's going to be like when they're like 13 and 15 or 23 and 25. I think each season is going to bring a different layer of cleaving that creates like confusion, guilt, probably frustration for them. I'm sure I'll be annoying. I don't know.
I am very annoying as a hovering mom to a 16-year-old son who does not want to hang out with his mom, and mom is not cool, even though I disagree. I have kind of I guess, to say to that, Kim, in my experience, it's really painful. Like, I have a really tight bond with my daughter. We like to do the same things. Probably it's dysfunctional at times because we want to hang out more than I want to hang out with her dad sometimes. But my son is so different. I love him. He's so cool. He's into cool things. I'm proud of him. He could care less about like hanging out with his mom or really his dad. He wants to hang out with his buddies, and he's a great, great person, but it's really painful, and I wasn't as prepared for that. I believe we have a really solid attachment, and I think if he thought about it, I'm guessing, he'd be like, my mom's not going anywhere. Like, my mom will take a bullet, like, any day. I think he would think that, but he doesn't really care. And I think that's developmentally appropriate. That's what my knowledge part of my brain says, but my heart is like, this is so sucks. I want to hang out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was a boy mom, so Like, yeah, I had my boys' experience. And so, of course, they loved being around me much of the time. But like Kim, like you were talking about the whole like sports thing and everything, we had transitioned to a season when they were teenagers to homeschool. And my husband actually stayed home with the boys to homeschool to have that bond because he missed out on so much when we were in the military and he wasn't able to be around as much. And so that was like a hard thing, right? Like not being able to be that primary, like, you know, that nurturing part. But I understand that they need that male like role model piece. And so I kind of like took a step back in a way from like that day-to-day parenting piece where my husband kind of took over. But then now transitioning into adulthood and they've got girlfriends and wives and like mom is not numero uno all the time. And, you know, that is certainly pulls at the heartstrings. And Tiff, yeah, you were talking about like the attachment piece. Like, you know, we focus on creating that secure attachment when they're little, but we don't talk about how that attachment morphs and changes through the developmental years. And like they really are supposed to like
Individuate and leave you.
otherwise we have maybe failure to launch and other things.
That's what's supposed to happen.
right.
Yeah.
It sucks.
And I was all for like 18 and they're going to be out. And then 18 came and well, I mean, their birthdays are summer birthdays, so they're older and they're when they were graduating. So, you know, it wasn't as clean as 18 and you're out kind of a thing. And actually, as we got closer to 18, I was like, oh, I don't know that I'm ready for them to leave. So, yeah.
I think, I think there's also a point, like I said, obviously I'm not in that stage or anything, but I think there's a point as the parent to grieve those different stages through life with your kid, because it is true, like even in middle school when a kid starts preparing to like have more peer influence, and even though they still love their family, they want to hear what their peers think and what they care about now. And a parent has to also prepare themselves on that end to like grieve that they're still number one at home, but like sometimes out in public. Like I think I've shared this on another pod, but like I remember specifically my first day of middle school, I was still calling my parents mommy and daddy. It was just part of my culture at home. And I remember my dad dropped me off. He leaned over to give me a kiss, and I was like, you're not doing that. I'm in middle school. People don't do that. And by the way, I'm calling you dad from now on. He told me years later, I broke his heart that day. And he wasn't prepared for that, of course. But my dad, too, I think of it when I went to college, right when, because my mom drove me down. Like, they prepared me and all, but my mom was the one who, like, drove me down to move in. And my dad was nowhere to be found. And I'm like, where is he? He was in the garage bawling his eyes out. And my dad does not cry. Like nowadays he does. Ever since my niece was born and he's had grandchildren, he cries all the time. But before that, I was the first loss, if I think about it that way. And I remember, like, I want to get emotional now because I just remember seeing him in the garage crying. And I'm like, Dad, like, he's like, you're leaving us. And, oh, you know, and I just think about, like, he should have probably prepped for that. You know, like my mom had conversations about me going to college, things like that. And she was preparing herself mentally for that. And she knew we had a great bond. So she knew she would call me, things like that. But my dad took it way harsher. But like I said, I think as a parent, you also need to understand and grieve. Like, they're not your little baby. And, oh, that makes me want to cry too, because I have a little baby. But yeah, like, so emotional thinking about it. But I think there's a grieving process, though, for parents. And you have to understand that every stage comes with a little bit of grief as they grow.
I would say with me, I'm the oldest of my siblings, so I was kind of like the trial and error child. Almost. Like, you know, you don't really,
That's beautiful.
you don't really know what to expect because you're the first one. So being the first child, do you want to go to school? Do you want to stay home? Do you want to whatever? You just don't know. So I was kind of like I said, the trial and error child because I was the first one to go to college. My parents had me relatively young, so they didn't go to college. My dad didn't even finish high school, honestly. So it's one of those, that situation being, you know, like you don't know what to expect with your children. You don't know what you're going to get out, how they're going to be. And I think part of it is also generational. My grandparents are a lot different as grandparents than they were as parents. So, and I see that because when I hear stories of my parents and the things that they say about their parents, I'm like, no, they're not like that. Like they're completely different people. So, I think being the first child kind of going into life not really knowing exactly what to do. When you get to the second and third, you're like, okay, I know what I did with this one, and I shouldn't have done it with this one. So now I have to transition and change things up. So I think if you have multiple children in your house and you can make those changes, the necessary changes you need to make, then I think that goes a long way with some of the younger kids. Me, I was kind of just winging it almost. So you're kind of just learning as you go. And I did that a lot with my mom because I'm really close to my mom. So we talk every day. Actually, we still live together. So we talk every day, obviously. But even when I was in school, I was calling her every day. I went to school 2 hours away. So I was still away from home enough. So that attachment never really left with my mom because one way or another we were talking. So I think the dynamic between mothers and their daughters is going to be a lot different than what it is for mothers and their sons, daughters and their fathers, because mine is incredibly different from my father. So it's just, there's a lot of different things at play that help with that transition because you just, you know what I mean? You don't know what to expect, and every child's different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what, as you were talking, really showed up for me. Like, I often say everything I learned with my first really doesn't apply to my Like, my children have the same DNA and are growing up within the same household, but they are such different children. And even when I think about, like, there are times where I try to take, like, the mistakes I learned from my firstborn and, like, all right, well, I'm going to do it differently with my secondborn. And then my secondborn, he's just cut from a different cloth. I don't know. I'm not sure. I love him fiercely, but he's going to give me a run for my money. And he's very temperamentally like me as well. So I think that's also, which I love because I get it and scares the shit out of me because I know what I did at each of these different developmental stages and phases. And I know how I rebelled and I know, and just all those different things coming together. So I think as the firstborn, we have different challenges because I was the firstborn in my family as well. You're that like trial and error kid. But even then, there are times where my secondborn will approach like a developmental milestone or stage. And I'm like, oh, I know this one. And then I go back and try to use what I learned from my first. And it's like, fuck it. There's nothing, none of it, nothing matters. It's not, it's just challenging that way.
I so quickly forget, and I forget really fast, and I have to remind myself when I think about when I was 16 or when I was 19, I don't apply any of that at all to the empathy that I need at times for my emerging adult. And, I don't think about how my son doesn't come to me that often or talk to me deeply about things. And I didn't do that either with my parents. My daughter and I do that. I'm grateful for that. And I had an older sister, and that was more of that happened there. My kids don't do that with one another. So I don't apply the things. And I think because as a parent, I feel like a completely different person than I was as a 16-year-old who thought my parents were effing stupid. Very smart people. I believed they were not smart at all. Just as I assume maybe my kids might think I'm not smart. So I don't know. I think there's something about that pulling away. And it's really, your first point came about why do we not have like data and studies and information, and why are we so at a loss for what to do? I think it's often has to do with there's so much negotiating that happens on a daily, and then, over time there's this evolving process, and it varies. There's so many variables. And honestly, my main like home base for myself is just my own regulation. And I have a mantra, and I say it a lot to myself. I am the parent. I am the parent. So like, let them be the child. Let them be the one who's going to flip shit if they need to. I can't do that. I got to do that. That time is over. Now I have to be the parent. So I feel like my home base or my go-to all the time is just, I'm the parent, and my need to self-regulate is the most important thing, or I will not make good decisions.
Deb, as you're talking, it brings me to one of the sections that I had prepared that I was hoping we would discuss here today, which is the new trend of gentle parenting your parents. I don't know if anyone has seen any of these clips or different things, but I was watching a video the other day and it said, "I hear that you're frustrated, Mom, but I need to protect my peace right now." And I can't, both my parents are therapists. I can't imagine pulling that shit with them and what they would do. But I think this trend is hilarious, but I also think it's like deeply revealing. I think it's saying something because I don't know. I mean, I was raised by boomers. Like that was my parents' generation. Gentle parenting was not a thing when I was being raised. And we talked on the last pod with like our littles about the difference between gentle and permissive parenting because I think we often get mistaken with those two. Like they are different. And one has much better outcomes than the other, and we should recognize the distinctions. But I don't know. What do y'all think about this new therapy speak at the dinner table, gentle parenting our own parents who maybe didn't gentle parent us?
I think because they didn't gentle parent us, I don't want to gentle parent them. Like it's almost like the roles reverse now. So I'm like, no, like you said this to me as a kid, so I'm gonna say it back to you. Like I feel like gentle parenting isn't. It probably doesn't work for me, but I'm also naturally calm, so I don't yell. If I yell, it means you really messed up. Like you really set me to that level where I can't come down. So even in high stressful situations, I'm still just okay or calm. And sometimes that bothers people more, especially if they want you to react. They want you to yell and scream, and I'm like, okay, and how do you feel about that? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're so well equipped to handle certain people because not everyone's going to react that same way and respond that same way. So with me, like I just stay really calm and neutral, but I also know that my parents were not gentle parents. All it took was a look. My stepmom mastered the soft talk. I wish I knew exactly what she was saying to my siblings to make them change quickly like that, but to this day I have no idea what she said to them to get them to switch up. But I think gentle parenting your parents, while it's funny, I feel like I want to get that little kickback sometimes. Like I want to get that little, I remember what you said to me when I was 10. So like I want to react the same way that you reacted to me.
That's so true. Like I feel like that's so much more work. Like already, like,
gentle.
yeah, like, which sounds ridiculous. Like, sounds ridiculous when I say it that way. But like, I wasn't gentle parented, and that's fine. But like, I have my own shit that like I have to resolve, and I'm like, I don't have time. Like, I'm already trying to set boundaries with you. I don't have time to also gentle parent you at the same time. Like, I'm not your therapist. Like, I can't do. So like, I love the idea of that. Like you said, it's hilarious, because I've seen some that I'm like that. I wish I could say that to my mother. Like, it would not go over well, but it'd be hilarious. For me, but like I just don't have the energy. Like I'm like I don't, and it's not that I don't think she deserves that. Like she deserves to be whatever. She deserves to have a kid that is nice to her. But like I just don't have the time or the energy or the space like to hold for her to have to be taught like how to be a better parent like to me. Like I don't know.
I feel like I gentle parent my parents through my child. So I wouldn't consider myself a gentle parent, but I mean, I guess I am. But like when I do interventions with my baby, I'll look at, because my parents are always around, so I'll look at them and I'm like, see, this is the way we do it nowadays and everything. And then I've dissected my parents' lives. They love that.
I bet they do.
If my mom hears this, she's gonna be like, I hate when you do that. But no, because my mom swears she doesn't have anxiety, and I promise you she does, right? When I'm allowed to diagnose people, she's the first one. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, but no, and then I've explained to her, I'm like, well, this is why you have anxiety. Like, you didn't get the love from your mom that you need. And this is why my mom changed it up for us, like, and completely. And I don't even know, till this day, I don't know how she's done that. But I gentle parent them through the baby. And I I explain why I'm doing this, like the crying out thing, like I was speaking about earlier. I explain to them, we're not gonna let her cry it out. If you were with her alone and she cries, you're gonna attend to her needs. And my parents are like, but that's not what we did. I'm like, right, but we're gonna do it because you needed that as a child. Like that's the way I do it. Thankfully, I have the most receptive parents, and they truly trust me as a parent. I don't know why sometimes, but like they allow me to be the parent. So if I say something, it is what goes. Like I don't have parents that are going to be like, well, I'm going to feed her this when you said no. Like they know what the limits are. But I don't know. I feel like I do gentle parent them through the baby. That's my point. And I highlight things.
It's like intergenerational healing.
Yeah.
It really is. I've seen that happen in my family too. And I think it's part of it's setting boundaries. Like, let me be the bad guy sometimes. I'm the parent. You can be like the loving grandparent who's feeding your grandkid too many cookies. But there is this, there needs, I think, conversation had to happen around those boundaries. And like, this is how I'm going to do this. And I really want your involvement. And I need to ask that you respect that this is how I'm going to do it. Both my parents, for many years of my kids' early childhood lived close. And so it was great to like always eat together and always celebrate together and things like that. And there were great times where they would say, okay, I'm out, like I'm leaving because I wouldn't do it like this. And I'm like, okay, I think that's great. Like, I think those boundaries are great to be able to say, my father would be like, I don't like the way they're talking to you. And as your dad, I want to protect you. I'm like, right. But in this moment, I'm their mom and I'm handling this. And so we all had to learn like how to take care of ourselves. Like he would have to go and I didn't have to take care of him and he didn't have to take care of me and I got to tend to like what was happening. So I don't know, maybe that's like the family therapist part of me. But there had to be lots of conversations about boundaries. I'm wrong a lot of the time around parenting. I mean, I do my absolute best and I apologize and I say, Mom, I could do that better or I could have done that better or I'm learning. But I'm with you, Tiff. I think there's a lot of healing that happens just generationally up and down.
Yeah, you talked about the intergenerational, and I feel like that's been my play is to break a lot of the intergenerational, curses, as they say, within my family. And of course, that started when I decided to enlist in the military, and I left abruptly after graduation because what I saw around me as a parentified eldest child, I didn't want that to continue. I was 17, so my mom actually had to sign me over to go, and she had agreed to do that. And I left. I didn't know what I was setting in motion at that point in time. And now that I am a grandparent myself, and we're living intergenerationally with my kids and my granddaughter.
I'm still waiting for that
has
4 generations in one household.
I am not ready for that kid. We are moving my parents closer to us, so like we're getting ready for the next phase. But they still want to be independent, and I want them to be independent because I'm still trying to figure out how to be a parent to adult children and a grandchild in the home. And my husband and I had to set those boundaries with my son and his wife around like the grandchild in the home and what we were or were not going to do as the grandparents living in the home. And I would say that was a really good conversation to have with our kids. And now we have this great thing. So, I'm mum and my husband's up and we get to be just that, and, she knows when to go to dad and to mom for the things that you should go to dad and mom for, right? But oh my gosh, I get to be fun. And we go to tumbling together on Tuesdays and I come into work after with my little track suits on, So, because, that's
my favorite day of the week.
Yeah.
So tracksuit.
Very tracksuit day.
Oh, yes.
I'm like, I know she went to tumbling this morning.
The admin staff have personally complimented me on the, track suits.
You have matching.
Matching.
Yes. Oh,
Yes,
that's
so
what I
wonderful.
needed to hear.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
Yes, but I think it is healing because the most important relationship to me as a kid outside of my mom was my own mom, and I think that's why I chose that name, like, because that's a whole other conversation,
Yes.
the name choosing for grandparents. But it has been healing for me. Like some of the things that I didn't get from my parents who didn't know how to recover from their own traumatic things that occurred in their lives. As I get to step into this new role and be mum and be that consistent person, regardless of what life is going on, has been so therapeutic and helpful to me in my own healing. It's just amazing. And, I lost my mom, gosh, 13 years ago almost. And that was the hardest thing, was like when she passed. And I was like, how am I going to do life without her in it? But her legacy lives on. And I think that is amazing.
It's really cool to like hear everyone's stories, because I don't have any kids and I'm very young, and my family was a family of people who had kids in high school. So like my grandparents were 16, 17, and 19 when they had their kids. So like my mom was the child of a teenage mom, and then my mom had kids, like had me and my older brother also in her teens. So like we're so close because I grew up like with my mom at the same time. But like my brother's wife is pregnant, and so like that's the first grandbaby like on our side, and he's 28. Like that's the age my mom was when she had my little sister. So like that difference is massive. So like it's cool to see like what he's doing with my mom, like because he's already setting those boundaries. Like they moved to Ohio, but they're like, like this is who you are to my kid, like all this different stuff. So like it's cool to see that like it's working out for you guys, because then that might mean it's gonna work for me when I get to that point in my life. But it's just like interesting, the dynamic, because like as the kid who like with the intergenerational stuff and is trying to heal that intergenerational stuff, it's so different like being on this side of things and not having like children in my life to have that example of like what I can do to parent. Like I'm not parenting anybody, like maybe myself.
I think there's tremendous healing in and I think there's woundedness as well. I mean, I've worked with clients and I've had friends who like grew up in a family system where there was like a favorite child, and then as those children have their own children, then some of that favoritism gets passed down to the grandbabies and things like that. So I've certainly heard stories and connected with people through therapy where that's a big part of the work that they're doing. But to speak to the light inherent in that is, I think there is beautiful intergenerational patterns of healing. And I think I grew up in a family system where my dad was just never there. Like he loved me and he loved our family, but he worked 70 hours. I mean, there are days where he saw 18 clients in a day. Like, I don't know how, like, I have some staff that can't do that in a week right now. And he would see 18 clients a day. And I remember like Monday through Friday and most Saturdays, because Saturdays he was driving around the clinics, getting the trash and the recycling, all kinds of stuff. It was crazy. So, but in adulthood, we went through like the reckoning with that. Like, I had my "Dad, you were never there" moment when I rebelled and smoked weed on the roof of the church and nearly got myself arrested a couple times, right? We had those moments. And he was tearful and apologetic and wanted and said, I fucked up. I would do it differently today. But, you can tell me that, but we don't have a time machine. But having my own children has allowed him to show me. Like he connects with my kids now. He leaves work sometimes before I do to take them to their respective activities or to connect with them with different things. And so there are so many times where it's like, we had in my 20s and early 30s, like those moments of like, honestly, it really happened in my teens. But where those moments of like, you were never there, like that full house moment. And then it wasn't until he showed me that it can be different and his willingness to do things different that like that elevator between what I knew on an intellectual level and what I could feel at a heart level really moved down and allowed me to connect to that. And I think that's where like the healing is. Like you can cognitively shift your thinking, but it doesn't heal until the elevator moves down.
Don't count this stage out now, because I feel like I had kids later on in life, not by choice, that just happened later. But And the work that I did with my parents before I had kids is why it's so healthy. Not that I don't think they were going to be healthy grandparents, but it's why they can enjoy being grandparents right now, no strings attached, because we have such a good relationship now. So, and that work happened without children. So just to prep them. So don't count this
I love
stage out.
that.
Yeah, don't count it out.
No, like this is like I go to my own therapist. I feel like everybody should, but like this is a conversation I recently had with my therapist because I was like, oh, I want to have kids young. My family had them young. Like my grandparents are in their 60s. Like they're still very young. Like I can do things with them. They're going to be alive for my kids. Like that kind of stuff. And then like I have been learning like, you know what? Maybe I'm not ready. Like maybe right now I need to work on like like you're saying, like healing with my parents and what I went through. That's going to allow me to be able to like be a better parent when I'm ready, like in that stage of being ready. Like I don't want to rush into it. And I was like, okay, like that was I was like, all right, I'm good with that decision. Like, and I don't need to feel
waited
guilty.
too. I also waited.
Yeah. And like my family's like, oh, but like your
30.
great grandma's still alive. She wants to see the baby. And I'm like, well, my brother's having one. Like enjoy. Like she's gonna get one. Like
Go see that baby.
yeah, I'm not feeling guilty for putting me
Get
first.
a dog and just
Yes.
be like, this is my baby now.
Somebody tell my husband that I'm allowed to get a dog. Tell my husband I'm allowed to have a dog, please. Like,
I think with me, being the oldest, I was naturally parentified too. So like I grew up way earlier than I wanted to. So my maturity level was way beyond what it should have been at a certain age. So being the oldest, my brother actually has 3 kids. So, and he's 2 years younger than me. So the grandkids, we're occupied with them at the moment just because I'm like, keep them occupied because the way that my family pressures me and my uterus to have a child, it's scary because honestly, I wanted to have kids at this point. I really envisioned that I would, but then I was still kind of almost raising my parents too. So and like taking care of them. And then I looked and all of a sudden my 20s were gone. So I'm like, oh, now we're here. Like we're in our 30s and we don't have kids. We're not married. But what happened to my 20s? What happened to my life at that point? So my youngest brother is going to be 18. So when he was born, we're 14 years apart. So when he was born, we always joked like, oh, when he graduates high school, we're going to see like the little kids running around the graduation. They're going to be my kids. So that's not me. It's my brother at this point because he's the one that has the 3 kids. So that's been my internal struggle right now because I envisioned that I would have kids at this point. But I knew that I didn't want to bring kids into this world and have to deal with the complexities of this world just in general. Complex. But also like dealing with my own internal issues. So my parents didn't get a chance to address that when they started having kids. They kind of just had them and then passed on their childhood trauma and things like that on to us. Yeah. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that type of parent. I'm not saying that we have to be perfect and we have to be all great all the time, but I'm like, I can't do this to my kids. Like I can't have the same struggles as a kid and bring them other kids into this world because at the end of the day, they don't ask to be here. So I think when this generation, like my parents' generation understands that, they're understanding, hey, like, yes, you decided to have children and these are the consequences of you having your children. But understanding that our plight and our struggles, we didn't ask for any of this. Like we could have not existed. Like we really could have just not been in this position. So understand that this is kind of how we think, and I think my generation kind of thinks like that too. Like they kind of go against their parents almost. Because like my parents couldn't go against their parents. So it's a different generation of kids that are actually speaking up now and, doing things a little differently. And I think that's where that dynamic shifts because we're all raised by very different people.
As you were talking, it made me think of, so one of the other pieces that I wanted to talk with us here today is sort of the emotional labor or that invisible labor that often falls to the eldest, frequently the eldest daughter within the family system. I have the benefit of being the eldest daughter. I have 2 older male cousins, but I still make Thanksgiving dinner and plan everything around it and all those different things. And so just sort of that notion of the eldest daughter being responsible to parent the parents, the eldest daughter being responsible to be the referee between the parents and the other siblings, the eldest daughter planning the vacations and the holidays and the this and the that, and sort of that invisible labor. And I've often referred to my own experience as like kind of at this point being that sandwich generation. Like I have little kids and then I have aging parents, and both need more support. And my parents are still very independent and my dad's still working, all kinds of different things. But I start to notice like more needs than they'd ever had previously. And then also with my littles and life getting very busy with them, sort of feeling stuck in the middle of, well, when do I do the thing? Like Deb got me to go to yoga yesterday because I put it in my calendar wrong. But like, when is there time
I was
for
going to
that?
go to 90+ degree yoga. I was not going alone. Freaking hot.
I had
and
put it in
needed
for
Kim there.
tonight.
Yeah.
Deb's like, I'll see you tonight. I was like, ooh, will you? But we figured it out. Where am I seeing you again? But
You invited me.
I did, but if I don't put it in my calendar, I don't go, and I put it in on the wrong day. Yeah. So, but all of it, like, just where is there room left for us in that? Whether you have little kids or whether you're still navigating like your family of origin system, we often talk about that emotional labor that like be referred to like the glue that holds the family together. But what happens when the glue runs out, or what do we do when the glue becomes unglued and fucks up their schedule?
Even with the like emerging adult, with teenage kids, I think the the idea that you can't pour from an empty cup, I challenge that theory. I can pour from an empty cup. I have to. At least that's been my sort of position. I maybe don't pour much, and it might not be the best thing, but the emotional, I think it's, at least I'll speak for myself. There's been a learning process that it is okay to acknowledge that I'm not okay, or it is okay to say, I'm exhausted, like the moody teenage stuff or the caring for my parents. And even if it's something as small as like, can you order me these from Amazon? No, go order it your damn self. Like, but I do those things. I'm the youngest daughter, but I'm the uber organized daughter. So I manage everything. And it is exhausting, and it is really hard to identify all of the invisible emotional pieces to that. It is really, really exhausting. And also, part of it is my choice. Like if I really boil it down, I'm like, but I do choose to do that. And I'm
Because everyone else will fuck it up, Deb.
damn right. Yeah. And you don't want it to be fucked up.
I
so
have
you
to do
yourself.
it, or else everyone else will fuck it up. But then I'm going to be resentful that I have to
That's
do
right.
it.
There is the pickle, Kim. That's the pickle.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, when my oldest was getting married, and we were adapting to having a daughter-in-law in the house, and my granddaughter, being born and everything, I chose to go back into therapy for myself because I was realizing like the emotional toll it was taking on me, and like there was another female in the house. Like up to that point, I was it, So that was an interesting thing. And one thing that kind of emerged from that time, because my cup was so depleted, my husband and I started like quarterly taking a weekend away. I mean, we would just go rent an Airbnb in Lancaster 30 minutes away. It didn't matter. Or we go, to another state. It didn't matter. Like I just needed to be in a different space because I realized that when I was in my own home where everyone else was present, I couldn't fully turn off. Even if I went into my bedroom, I couldn't fully turn off and just be me and allow myself to just be and, cry, be angry, whatever I needed. And so going away, I could actually turn off. And like that physical boundary, like that physical space. And so they knew when mom and dad left the house and went away for the weekend or whatever. I mean, my husband just got to benefit from it all. He didn't seem like, he has an issue with turning off.
He could relax in the chaos.
He got to just enjoy going away with me. So, and where I could just be me. And I'm sure he enjoyed having me just be his wife and not worried about all the things that need to be done or planned or organized. So I think that has been the silver lining is like learning, how to just be me and not a caretaker to my parents or to my kids or grandchild, so like to just find space for me has been so helpful.
I feel like being a therapist on top of being the eldest daughter has actually screwed me over in more ways than not.
Absolutely.
I am looked at from even extended family as like the emotionally regulated granddaughter, cousin. The amount of missed calls and text messages that I get from family members to help them navigate not just my own family, but everyone else's, because being a therapist also has an invisible added layer to it that comes with that. And even within my own family, I mean, I have a younger sister, but her needs are just different than mine. And she's just not as stable as I am. So that I think I also get added layers to that too, because my parents can't really rely on much because she's still figuring out her life. But I feel like the therapist thing is really what I battle with too. But thankfully, I have a very competent husband who has been married to a therapist for almost 9 years now. So he's really well trained. I've talked about this in another pod too. He is very well trained. So he notices when my max, like when I'm already at my max. So I'm able to delegate tasks to him. Like, okay, ever since a couple years ago, we always do either Thanksgiving or Christmas away with extended family, like my side and his side. It's a big ordeal and a lot of planning. Between us, we always have to do it. And if it's too much for me, it's nothing for me to be like, babe, you've got this year, right? Like you've got it. And thankfully, like I said, I've trained him well, I would say. So he knows how to do all of that stuff, and he'll reach out to everyone and be like, all right, this is how much it is. And all that stuff. But delegating tasks and also, traveling and getting away, I think has just been the best thing possible. Because my empty cup that I pull from, it's just not good. Like it's not. So I need to refill. Yeah. But I also, going back to what you guys were saying, I like the control. I like things like I like to pick the Airbnb for everywhere that we go. I like to pick the dinner menu for Thanksgiving and Christmas because I want to make sure I can eat all of it and, all of these things. So part of that is like the control freak in me, which I think came from being the eldest daughter in my family. Well, an eldest child in general. So.
Yeah, I feel like eldest daughter syndrome is like my whole life. I feel like it's like that's just what I am. But like the notion of being your family's therapist too, like, is so strong in my household. So like there was a time in my life where I thought I was going to be an engineer. Like I started school in engineering. I left the first year, went to Gettysburg College for a year, hated it, moved home, and I was like, I actually don't want to be in an office all day. Something like and then my whole family was like, oh, we just assumed you were going to do something that was like therapy related. You've just been doing that your whole life. And I'm like, great, that's not nice. I don't need to know that.
Thank you for naming my childhood trauma.
Yeah, like that I was your therapist. But
For knowing it before I did.
Put it out there.
yeah, I was like, yeah, I feel like you should listen to what you're saying. But like my parents, my stepdad and my mom recently divorced, like in the last year. And the number of times I got calls from both of them are being like, hey, I need to talk to you. Like your mom's pissing me off, or I need to talk to you. Like he's doing this. And I just had to, like my husband, which like I totally get it. I'm training him too. He's still learning. But like he'll be like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. And he'll like take my phone and he'll be like, we're done. Like I'm not listening to you complain about your parents. Like I'm not listening to them complain to you. Like you need to be your own person. Like he moved us away. Like we moved 45 minutes away, and he was like, I'm done. Like I'm done letting your parents like be the third member of our marriage. Like there's me, there's you, and there's your mother like in the middle. Like we're not
Get
doing
comfy.
that anymore. Yeah. And that is so hard to do with like the guilt though, because I tell him that like I feel so much guilt that I feel like I'm letting my parents down. Like, and when I moved out, my whole family was like, oh, you abandoned us. Like how could you do that? And I was like, I was married.
No, that's the third. I mean, guilt, boundaries, and disrespect. And I think that those three themes, and I think it depends, like different family systems and just the family culture in general. But I remember, and I'm still working with my mom on that. My mom loves to buy things, and my house is full. There is no more room in my house for anything. And if it has multiple parts, or if it sings, if it fucking sings, it's not allowed in my house. And there was a moment where she was like, well, when you get sick of it, just take it back to my house. No, that's more work for me. You need to know if it crosses the threshold, it becomes mine to do with what I want to do with it. And what I want to do with it is throw it away the moment my kids go to school. And my mom is like, no, just send it back. No, I will not. But
Invisible labor.
there have been a lot of like push me, pull you, a lot of challenges with that. I know it's really heavy for her. I know it really hurts her. But I had to say, Mom, it's like I am being waterboarded with stuffed animals. Like, and I'm not a good housekeeper. I work too much. We have too many pets. I'm naturally ADHD and disorganized anyway. So then it all just winds up in little piles. Like, it just doesn't, it's not working. But it continues to be like a source of guilt, a source of sadness, needing to really set and maintain boundaries, needing to say, my dad will still call me 27 times in a row. And I'm like, Dad, are you dead? Who's dead? What happened? And he's like, I lost my iPhone charger and I need you to order me a new one. Dad, that is not a 27 call problem. Like,
You're breaking the 911 rule.
you're breaking the rules. And so I think also there is just that balance and obviously the need to set and maintain it. How do we do those things effectively? And I don't know how to do it without guilt, but I guess tolerate the guilt that we inevitably feel when we set those boundaries. I don't know.
Sending our parents to therapy.
Yeah.
Like my mom started going to therapy too. And like she learned how dysfunctional like her life was and how she made it dysfunctional, like specifically for me as like the daughter that was the closest to her. Like my brother is like, he's a great guy, but he like took the whole family thing and was like, I'm out. Like I'm out of here as soon as he was like, I turned
guilt.
18. Like
he
I'm
sees
out.
what it did to you, so he's like, I don't want to
And he's 3 years older than me, but he was like, I turned 18. He's like, I'm out of here. Like, no, thank you, kind of thing. But like my mom, she used to do the like, how many texts, and then she'd be like, are you dead? Like, are you alive? And I'm like, I'm literally working. Like, I can't answer you. But now she'll text me like, hey, can you call me when you have a second? It's not an emergency. And I'll be like, oh, okay. So like I'll get to it when I get there, and then like I'll call her later, and she'll be like, oh yeah, I just wanted to like tell you that I met my friend today, and like we had a good lunch. And I'm like, thank you for not calling me 30 times.
No,
Like,
I'd have my mom call me 30 times, and then I would get a call from my dad telling me
used
to
to be
call
that
my
way.
mom. She heard an ambulance. She wants to know if you're okay.
Yes.
I live in Texas, Ma. Like, the fuck you gonna hear it from there? No. Oh, goodness gracious. But we worked through that. We're much better.
It used to be that way.
The guilt is definitely intense. I'm naturally like that because it's just I was almost ingrained to be a certain way. Like I spent the last 5 or 6 years taking care of my dad and I'm only in my 30s, and I never anticipated being in my 30s taking care of my dad, going to hospitals, to talk to doctors and schedule appointments, and just being that caregiver at this point in my life. So the guilt for me was he constantly needed he needed me to do everything. He never had to worry about a doctor's appointment. I just knew that you had to be ready at 2:00 on Tuesday so I can take you to this doctor's appointment. Like he never had to worry about anything. But with him, he makes it seem like I have to do that. And I'm like, well, I live 45 minutes away from you, sir. So I have to get in my car, drive 45 minutes to get you, and then you want to go all over the place to do whatever you need to do, and then my day is done. I don't have anything that I can do anymore.
Driving
It's
Miss Daisy.
Yeah,
It just drives me everywhere.
Yeah.
And then if I say no, then I'm being disrespectful. I'm not listening because at this point, he did his part by being the parent, by, again,
Bringing you into the world.
bringing me into this world. Again, sir, did not ask for this. I did not ask
Hard
to
was
be
that
here.
really?
Yeah, like
Let's be real.
For you.
Yeah.
did not ask to be a part of any of this insanity that is life. So, with him, he's always like, okay, you have to do this. Like, this is what you're supposed to do when he has cancer. So, like, when he found out he had cancer, I was in the hospital for hours trying to, get in touch with doctors. And then, like, I had his phone, and then I had my phone, and we're calling people, like, answering people, telling everyone the same thing who call him, and then I have family that's calling me. So for about 2 or 3 days, I had 2 phones talking to people, and I'm like, I'm tired. I'm really tired. But like, I don't know when my cup is empty because I never really had the chance to observe that. I had to just do it. It was just my job to do. And he even told his friends and family that were called, they're like, Nakaya did, she stayed on top of everything. Like I gave us updates on you and like let us know. He's like, well, that's what she's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's like we owe them.
I'm supposed to what?
Like you owe them
Like-
something.
Like,
I'm thinking about like my son, maybe 10 years from now being like, I don't owe you anything. Why is it thinking about it really isn't, it's my job to raise good people. That's what I want, for them to raise good people, and for them, truly, if I had one wish, it would be that they would have no suffering, but I can't. Like, that's where our biggest growth is anyway.
I want them to suffer just enough to have a great sense of humor.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think my
enough.
son mastered sarcasm at like 2 years old. When he was like, "Mommy says we don't have to brush our teeth." I'm like, "No, I was saying, oh, I guess we're not brushing our teeth tonight." That didn't work. But I think that the job is to move with them as they evolve and let go. And I suck at it. But I do think that then they don't really, they don't owe me something, and that's hard. And it's hard to do that as a clinician working with families too. Because I don't want uber selfish children. Certainly I want them to have compassion, and I want them to care about important big things and make big change in the world that needs compassion. But I think at the same time, feeling indebted or that you are solely responsible for your parents isn't, I don't know how much in my family system it would allow them to be their true selves. It's a dilemma. It's an internal dilemma for sure. But I think I want them to be themselves. And I guess if that means leaving your parents behind, it's what it means.
And I think, though, from both sides of that coin, like, I want my children to grow into whatever is most congruent for them. And I can't wait to continue to know them and get to know them as they get to know themselves. Like, I'm really excited for that. I think there's also a piece where, I can remember a season in my like mid 20s, and I had to move away.
Yeah.
Really, I had to get a lot of my parents have larger than life personalities. If you've met either of them, you know this. Many of you have. Just larger than life. And I think to create space for myself and to discover who I am in all of that, I moved 2,000 miles across the country. And it was not a popular decision at the time, but it was a necessary decision at the time. And I remember once I got that distance, with that came the perspective of like, holy shit, my parents are people.
Right.
Which, like, that sounds really self-centered and silly, but at the time I was like, they're not people, they're just my parents. No, they're like human beings with their own flaws and challenges and struggles and internal dilemmas. And it took me a moment to like recognize and grieve what I would have preferred but wasn't present, while also, I think, in that finding some forgiveness and interacting with them as they were, not as I wish them to be. And I think that really deepened our relationship in many
Yeah.
ways, while also giving me permission to recognize the parts of my family of origin that I don't wish to bring into my current family.
Right.
And I don't know that you can do that. I don't know that everyone needs to move 2,000 miles away.
I did.
But
I did the
you
same
need
thing.
boundary. You need something. And depending on how big your parents are, sometimes 2,000 miles is the only way to get out from under the shadow. So I don't know, to discover yourself, sometimes you really need that distance, and mourning the version of the parent you didn't have, but you would have liked, while also recognizing and really valuing the parts of them that were, I don't know, you just start to see them more multifaceted, I
Yes.
guess.
Yeah, I remember right in my mid 30s, like coming to that reconciliation that my parents were never going to be for me what I had hoped for them to be, and that they are who they are, and this is what I have. And so like I came to an acceptance with that, and yeah, I do feel that as the eldest, feel the sense of responsibility to like figure out planning for them in their later years. And when my mom went through cancer, there for every appointment, making sure she was on top of it. Because, treatment definitely ruins your ability to think clearly. So just taking over those tasks for them. And, my husband and I have had multiple conversations with our kids and said, look, we tried to shift the dynamic of parenting with our kids. And it's like, we acknowledge that we don't have it all figured out. That we're not perfect parents either. But that we hope that they will build upon what we started and create, a better, life for their families, like giving them permission to do better than we did, and that we are accepting of that. Like, and I think that it's hard as a parent. You have that pride, that doesn't allow you to be like, you go and be the best you. And I think that it takes a tremendous amount of humility to step back and be like, you're doing better than I did at your age, and that's okay. So that's what I hope for my kids as they, continue into adulthood. But I do find myself at times like wanting to be like, but I raised you, I did all this. Like, I'm asking this one thing of you, which, when we were moving, transparency.
You owe me.
I didn't say those words exactly, but I was kind of like.
What you implied, though.
When my son, seemed to have a tone that his goals that weekend weren't the same as ours. And I was like, wait a minute, we're moving. And, we had a back and forth and stuff, but I think it was a healthy, discussion. So it is hard to not be that parent, with your adult children.
Absolutely. I relate to what Kim, you were saying about moving away. I did not go 2,000 miles away. I only went to Philly for school, but I needed that delineation from my parents to really grow. And it wasn't until, I think I've also said this on a recent, or not a recent pod, but one a while ago, where I got into a fist fight my freshman year of college. And,
Tell me more.
It was all over a dirty towel. Like, I was disgusted with my roommates, I don't know how to say it in English. It's called bombao. I think it's like mildew smell. But we call it bombao. Like, if the towel is bombao, you need to go wash that. So my roommate had it hanging when I would walk in every time, and I'm like, knock it off. And so we fought about that into a fist fight. By the way, we were friends in high school too, so it was just the worst. But anyway, in order to not get kicked out of Temple, I had to go through their judicial system, and I had to require 6 months of anger management, aka it was therapy. So didn't know it at the time, but then I realized years later, I'm like, oh my God, it's therapy. But I came in with anger, and I knew I had an anger issue, I would say. Didn't know where it really came from, but throughout the anger management, aka therapy, I realized I got a lot of that from my dad, because I was disciplined through, if I'm mad, I'm gonna hit you kind of thing. But what that allowed for, because I was away and I was able to process that by myself in that therapeutic space, I came home on breaks and I had conversations with my dad on an ongoing basis about, I'm figuring out where this came from, and it's from you. And he's like, what? And I would explain, well, you handled situations like this, made me do it. I'm not blaming you for getting into a fist fight, okay, freshman year, but I am saying that this is kind of where it came from, and it allowed us to have a lot of healing conversations, to the point that my dad broke down and was like, I was abused growing up. I thought I was doing better. I only hit you when you did something wrong. That's it. And I was like, but the turmoil that actually led me with, and the feelings I held on to, it took me a long time to get rid of that. But that getting away from my parents allowed me to really go back in a better headspace and come back and be like, I didn't like this, that you did that. And I approached my mom about some things. I'm like, I didn't like the way you did that. Thankfully, they're super receptive and humble, and we're able to really set aside that pride, because I totally agree with that. I feel like that's going to be me when I'm older with my kids. They're going to be like, I didn't like that. I'm like, I did my best, but I'm trying to be now. But that was the healing part for me, and I think that really has projected our relationship into what it is now. And I have no issues now saying straight up to my mom or dad, I'm not doing that because you did it. I'm doing it this way. And they're like, okay, totally get it. And they respect that. But that healing process came when I left the nest. And Yeah, but I felt like I was fully able to get out when I got married. Like, that's when my parents, I remember my dad was like, she's yours now, and shook my husband's hand, and he's like, good luck. All yours. Like, this is the last Valentine's Day gift, because my dad was my Valentine until I was married. And then he told my husband, he's like, you're getting her stuff now from now on. Like, it's on you. So it was like that, leaving the nest and like giving the handshake and passing her over and stuff. But that healing process was so important for my family, and growing up. And it was therapy, dude, therapy.
But it sounds like they acknowledged the person you became as well and created space with that. And I think that that's a trend that I notice in, at least when I'm working with my clients that are struggling with their parents. It's that their parents still almost see them as like this 12-year-old little shy kid, right? And it's like, no, that's a 33-year-old. That woman is a doctor. Like, she cuts people open for a living. Like, she's no longer that shy little 12-year-old. But
True.
I think that what you're describing is like parents that were able to mature emotionally, spiritually with you and allow you to grow alongside. I think in certain parent-child dynamics, we see almost that stuckness or that tension that gets created because the caregiver or parent is unwilling to recognize that they're not. And you hear it like that like, Mr. Like, you'll always be my little girl. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm a big girl now. Like, I mean, there are those different things, right? So I guess, how do we support parents or caregivers in creating space for that new season and grieving the loss of the little while moving towards that? The thought that keeps coming up for me is the difference between like obligation versus authentic connection.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't ever, when I'm grown, like when my kids are grown, I don't want them ever to feel obligated to be with me.
Right.
I want to have authentic connections with my kids when they're grown. And so, I truly don't know how to cultivate that other than create space for them to become who they're becoming. But
Space and grace.
Space and grace.
And I think too, I mean, being on the child side of things, I don't think it's our responsibility on our end to do that part, but I will say, like, when I did move away and I had those conversations, I allowed myself to have grace for my parents and understanding too. Like, that was the first time in my life too. I was like, you were growing up as you were raising me. Like, I get it now. And now it's full circle now that I'm raising my own babe. Like, now I'm like, wow, like, I get all the things, the magical things my mom and dad would say that I wanted to rebel against. But I think grace too, giving both on both sides. Like, we've got to allow that grace and that space to grow.
From a parent's side too, joining our kids in what they authentically enjoy. Like, I've joked a bunch that I don't need to play Minecraft ever again. I don't anymore, but I did it enough, or asked questions about it, or was very involved. And there's that changed from with time with my own parents was like doing what they were doing, like whatever my parent was doing. If I wanted time with them, I would be doing that thing, which usually was not a kid thing. It wasn't fun. It was like chores or whatever. Washing a car, like not fun when you're 8.
Working in the garage.
Yeah, I mean, it was joining an adult in their world versus making that shift and like meeting my kids and doing the things they like. It's great when it aligns. My daughter and I love to do the same things, but I've had to stretch myself. My hope is that it will develop into, as you said, Kim, like having those more authentic connections instead of like a forced or obligatory relationship.
I think for me, like, something that helped too is the idea that, like, my family that I grew up with is now like extended family, and my husband is my immediate family. So, like, making that distinction from my parents to be like, you fit the role of an extended family member now, that like, exactly, I'm not obligated to put you first. Like, my husband's going to come first. That's just the way that it's going to be. When I have kids, they'll come first. Like, that's just how it's going to roll. Like, we can go get our nails done together because that's what I would have, like, you did that with your mom. Like, but we're not, like, I'm not coming to your rescue to, like, fix things for you. I'm not obligated to be there or, like, to be a part. You're an extended family member. Like, I've cut extended family members out of my family now, like, for a lot of different reasons. And it's like, you fit a role now that, like, if it comes to a point, like, that you can be cut from my family if it has to
Cut
be.
you out.
I don't want to. Like, I don't want to. Yeah, but like, you fit that role now because I'm not obligated just because I'm your kid.
I don't owe you anything.
Yeah, I hate that saying because I'm like, okay, you did what a parent's supposed to do. Like, because they'll be like, I gave you housing and I gave you food. And, like,
Right.
and I'm like, you
Thank you.
literally.
Otherwise, you would have been arrested. Like there is,
Yeah, and I'm like, that's literally.
that is as self-serving for you as it is for the rest of us.
Like, that's literally what you signed up for when you had a kid. Like, you just gave me the basic need. Like, I don't owe you
Basic
for.
I dare you
Like,
to
I can't
not
do
give me
anything.
those things.
Yeah, like CPS would have been so involved. Like, if you weren't giving me that. So, like, yeah, like that idea of like, oh, you owe me. Like, because that's been said to me before too. But it's like, I don't owe you for just giving me life. Like, you put me on this planet. Yes, you can take me out of it, like you used to say. But, like, I can also take my.
That's from Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Do you know where that quote originated? Bill Cosby.
And that makes me sad because I don't like that man. But no, it was like a.
Hasn't all of our feelings towards Bill Cosby just evolved, like really weirdly? Because I
Everybody
used to
was
think
like,
he
"Wah,
was the coolest, and then
Yeah.
I remember I tried using that line on my youngest one time in the car, and he's such a smart kid. And he's like, no, you can't take me out. And he's like, God put me here. And I was like, what do I say to that? I'm like,
take the L.
I was like, he's smarter than us. So
I love the idea of cutting people out. That's been one of those things that I've learned to do because sometimes you just have to for your own sanity, your own mental health. Sometimes you got to say, hey, you can keep that over there because I can't do it. Because again, you get you owe me, you know, those conversations. And it always confused me because I'm like, wait, how do I owe you? What does that mean? Like, I don't, you tell me that we need to do this because I raised you or I did this. I'm like, but genuinely, I can't do that at 10 years old. I can't go and buy my own clothes. I can't work. I can't do, you know, the adult things at 10. So who else is supposed to do it? If you put me on this earth to, you know, be here, you decided to make that decision to have a child or have children. So I think that was part of my problem with a lot of family, a lot of my extended family, and even like my immediate family. Like sometimes you're like, I can't, we got to step back. And it took me a very, very long time to realize that was okay to do that. And really like my stepmom was the one that told me that I have to start doing that because if you keep letting people poke you and poke you and poke you, eventually you're going to snap. And sometimes you get to that point when you snap, and I don't like to snap. I like to be calm. I like to just move on through life and, you know, power through things because really that's what you got to do sometimes. So it's, I think it's healthy to cut people out sometimes because sometimes they need it.
even for seasons, there was a time where I had to cut my dad out for a while because of the choices he was making. And he was directly like, you know, pinpointing me, attacking me as if I was the problem, projecting it onto me. And I remember having, and it was around the time that my grandmother, my mom that I was talking about, had passed. And so I knew I was emotionally raw. I knew my mom was emotionally raw. And that's where I had to put that boundary in, even with my parents. And I said, look, Mom, you want to be married to him, and I respect that, but like, I'm not doing this. And so for, I think a little over a year, I did not speak to my dad until like he corrected the things that he needed to work on, and make that choice. It's like, if you want to be in my life, then we're going to have a level of respect. We're going to be decent with each other. We're not going to behave this way. And ultimately, you're not going to behave a certain way in front of my children. Because at the time they were, school age children, and, grandpa got to be just grandpa with them. My kids were oblivious to the stuff I grew up with until that point. And so I did cut them out for a season. And I really honestly at that time thought that was it, that it was just going to be done. But I'm thankful that my dad chose to make steps to being a better person. And, I think our relationship now is better than it ever was as a kid, and certainly better than I thought it ever would be. And so it doesn't always have to be a permanent, thing, but maybe for a season, until you can figure out yourself, they can figure out themselves, and hopefully come back to a reconciliation.
But what do you do when you can't? Like that's part of my issue right now because I'm actually estranged from my dad. I had to make the decision because as long as I was taking care of him, he really just had zero respect for me, like whatsoever. I put my life on hold to make sure that he was okay, because when he first got sick, I was like, look, I'm too young to lose you. My siblings are too young to lose you, and your grandkids are way too young to lose you. So I'm going to put my life on hold. We're going to get through this. We're going to go to your appointments. We're going to make sure that we're okay, and get you to a point where you're going to be stable enough to go back to work if you want to, or whatever. But he got to the point where he just was so in his head that he's the parent and he deserves this. He deserves the utmost respect. And I'm like, you cannot keep bullying me. Like your dad, especially from a daughter standpoint, like your dad's supposed to be the first man to like love you unconditionally. So I think when you get to that point where you're like, okay, you genuinely do not respect me. Like I'm not asking for you to do much. Just please don't speak to me any kind of way, and don't respect the things that my opinion. Like, you may not have to like it, but at least understand, hey, like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, this is why I'm the way that I am. But with him, I let him use my car. This is just one of those real just small examples that became a big thing. Let him use my car once I was able to get back to work and everything. And I was like, okay, now it's your responsibility. I'm giving you my car. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to do anything. Just, I'll take care of my insurance, everything with the car. You take it, go to your appointments. The only thing I need you to do is just please make sure that you can get it fixed, because I was in an accident and I couldn't get it fixed. So I was like, just take care of it. Make sure you put gas in the car. And when I get it back, just make sure it's clean. I never had gas in my car when I got it back, and it was always dirty. So I'm like,
That's where people show you their.
They are.
and at that point, I had to make the decision to be like, okay, yes, you are going through this terrible battle right now, and I would love nothing more to be there with you, but I can't be here for you and then have you just keep using me as your punching bag. Like, I can't do it.
I think it's so generational too. Like, just that generation in general, like that was a time where you were raised to be like, you're going to be a dad, you're going to be a mom. Like, mom's going to stay home, dad's going to go to work, like that kind of thing. So like they're like having that identity that revolves. And like my mom went from like teenager to mom, and so like her whole life was like, okay, I have kids I have to take care of now. Like, she grew up, she was like in school, she was partying, whatever, she was doing her rebellious teenager phase, and then like all of a sudden she had kids. So like her whole identity became mom. And so like you were talking earlier about identity, something I had to come to terms with is that like my mom isn't just a mom. Like, her identity isn't just mom. Like she has friends, like she runs her own business, like she's an employer, she does this kind of, like that kind of stuff. And like she had to come to terms with like, I'm no longer just mom. Like, I'm mom to my kids, but they're like adults. I still have a little sister who's in the home, but she's almost 18. Like, so soon she's gonna be just the kid that's at like mom. She's not, so like my mom's grappling right now with this identity change. So, but I think that's where some of that comes from, of like, well, I'm your dad. Like, you owe me that. Like, whatever. I don't owe you respect because you're my kid. It's like, well, I'm not a kid anymore. Like, I'm a grown adult. So like that disrespect goes both ways. So like we feel like we disrespect them if we put boundaries and stuff, but then they just disrespect us anyway. So it's like, it just goes back and forth. But it's like just a huge identity thing. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed that elsewhere, just because I don't have kids. So like, I don't have the identity of mom. Like, I have the identity of wife, of eldest daughter, like those kinds of things. But I've never held that identity. Like, and so I don't know what it's like to feel that identity and have to let it go. Like, whenever your kids leave. Like,
if I can like add on that though, I feel like the language needs to change. I feel like we owe our kids. It's a lifelong process, but we owe them. So I think about my mom, who any conflict I've ever had with her in life, like even as a teenager, I'm like, I'm going to give you the silent treatment. It didn't work for my mom because my mom was right next to me going, I'm sorry. Like, what happened between, and she was the first one till this day. I can't tell you the last time we had a conflict, but she would be the first one to apologize, the first one to come to me. It just doesn't work on her because she takes the role of, I brought you into this world, I'm responsible for you. And not that she, still wipes my butt and does all that stuff now, but her responsibility as a mom, even though that evolves into different stages of my life, she still believes she's going to be there for me at all times. She's going to continue with that attachment piece. She's going to continue to just do those motherly roles. Like I said, even though those things change during times, but she truly has that that notion, like, I owe you. Like, I'm the one who brought you here. I owe you, and I need to continue that. Even if I do feel like I owe her sometimes because she's awesome. But I really think the language needs to change as a parent, especially as the child grows. But we owe our children, like, we owe them an emotionally stable household to grow up in. And it goes beyond food, shelter, clothing, you know, all those basic needs. It goes beyond that. So I wish we could change that language on the parents' end and be like, no, we owe you, children.
I think that I hear this a ton in treatment, but even changing what we mean by respect.
Yeah.
It's a big button for me. I think respect implies intention, and there are so many things all throughout our development that are not intentional. Especially if you take any neurodivergence whatsoever, or just a developmental stage, or just a mood, or I'm hungry, or I'm tired, and something comes out and it's not intentional. And so I think to insist that respect equals however that is defined is such a setup for not being a parent who your kid's going to come to when they need you. I feel like it's important. That's why the mantra of I'm the parent. I have to try to be steady as much as I can, even if I don't feel the least bit steady inside, because all of those other things that are happening for them, and I have to keep reminding myself it's going to happen, I believe, well into their 20s, as their brain is developing, that it's not a disrespect to me if they're having if they're angry, or they're sad, or they're withdrawn, or they're whatever, and that it's not an obligation that they behave a certain way within reason. I mean, you cannot. I mean, we have rules. We do, actually, but you don't have to behave in a certain way. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to just not feel like talking. And I've had to adapt that because my kids are different from each other. One wants to talk my ear off after school, or text me and be like, "Mom, should I get matcha?" Or should I'm like, "I don't know." And the other one, is like, meh, like MEH is like what you get in a text. That's it. Meh. So I think I wish I got the manual of this is how much you are going to have to adapt and adjust and be flexible and be steady, and you're going to take a shit sandwich every day. And that's my job, actually, I think.
No, that's my head just kept going flexibility as you were talking, because my identity as a mother is a core part of me. Even if God forbid something happened to my kids, that would still be my identity. That is so central to who I am, and the behaviors consistent with the different parts of that identity. It is my responsibility to nurture my kids, but it looks very different at 7 and 9 than it did when they were 6 months and 2 years old. Nurturing shifts, connection shifts, boundaries, discipline shifts, all these different things change. There's still those core parts that are the crux of of that part of my identity. And I think I was fortunate in that I didn't enter into motherhood until I was in my 30s. And I'm very grateful for that, because I think I had the opportunity to cultivate other parts of my identity. So I think that in many ways gives me more space and grace in my identity as a mother, because it's not if you are a good parent, your kids are going to be pissed at you sometimes for things that you're like, why? No, you cannot ride a toddler car into the intersection down the hill behind our house. That was a fight I had with my 7-year-old last week. And he is furious with me. He's like, you ruined everything. And it's one, that's a baby car. So you now weigh 50 pounds. I don't know if you should even be in it, but you definitely shouldn't be in it careening down the hill behind our house that goes directly into an intersection. And meanwhile, he's like, I'm fine. It's fine. You ruin all my fun. And so you still have to set boundaries and have these different things. But it's going to look so different. And I think getting back to those basics while still being flexible, I don't know, protecting what's important to you while recognizing that, man, they are going to challenge you differently in every season.
I think you almost have to have a happy medium. Like you have to be able to be the disciplinarian, but also understand that you want your kids to understand that you're there for them. Because I work for, I'm a peer mentor, or not a peer mentor, a truancy mentor with PCS. And I work with teenagers. And they are incredibly entitled. And they feel like they don't need to go to school. They don't need to do this. And when I hear them speaking to other adults and speaking to their parents, I'm like, there's no way in this world that I could have ever uttered anything like that to my parents. Even now, I would not be able to do it. So it's like, I feel like there has to be some level of fear almost when you're, and I don't have kids. I'm a cat mom. So it's all I got right now. But I think there has to be some level of fear to get that respect, but you also can't just let them do whatever they want. Like, you can't just let them say, oh, you can't be that friend too. Like, you can be the friend, but you can't always be the friend. Just like you can't always be the disciplinarian. Like, there has to be some level of balance and just, again, a happy medium, because they have to be able to understand that, yes, you absolutely need to do this. You have to understand why you need to do this. But I'm also not going to be pointing my finger at you all the time and telling you that you need to do this and you need to be this type of person.
I think as someone who doesn't really like to be told what to do, I'll be honest, my kids don't like being told what to do. When they were 2, and I was like, this is the time to eat, and this is the time to sleep, and this is the time to go potty, they didn't necessarily like it. And I feel like I haven't intentionally used, I guess I want to push on the fear idea, because I feel like the respect that, I think it's different from, I think I can get compliance with fear. Yeah. And I've needed to do that, I guess. I'm not terribly frightening, but I could be. But I think the respect part comes from giving it. And I have to understand, for me and my kids, I have to respect that I might not like something. And does it have to happen right now? As the person who's like, but if we do it now, we won't have to stress about it later. Well, I have one kid who likes to procrastinate, and he gets everything done. It's just not the time I would want it done. And so that's where that flexibility for me has come into play. Like, I can make it happen now, but I'm creating, I am really sowing seeds of, I'm not going to go to my mom my mom's just going to be pissed, or she's going to want it done this way or that way. And so sometimes I have to let go and be flexible. And that's my way of respecting that they do need to do it, but they're going to do it in a different way than I'm going to do it.
No, I also struggle because I don't, my kids are not afraid of me at all. And it was interesting last week. It was actually your training right before I was trying to get my kid on the bus, and my kid won't sit down and eat. He just won't do it. And you want your kid to eat before he goes to school. And I was like spoon feeding him to get him to eat before he goes to school. And then he like hauled off and just whacked me in the face. And I saw red. I had to leave. I had to excuse myself from the room. I was really proud of how I acted in that moment. I guess I was overheard going, "What the fuck?" once I got upstairs, which I'm not super proud of that piece. But I wasn't in the room when I said it. So I guess I was overheard later, but our house the walls are quite thin. So,
He told you you're
oh, yes. Yes, because after he got home from school, I was like processing it with him, and I was like, buddy, you cannot hit me in the face. You just cannot. Like, and he's like, well, you touched my breakfast plate. I was like, that is not a reason to hit anyone, least of all your mother. And he's like, well, you said, what the fuck? And I was like, well, you weren't supposed to hear that. And also, I'm really sorry, I made a mistake. And so, like, we kind of went back and forth on these different things. But later, so my oldest is a snitch, and he told the bus driver.
Oh my God.
And so the bus driver I can't make this shit up. So the bus driver then is like, well, you know what I would have done if that was my kid. And like, and when I was growing up, what my parents would have done. And it's like, I know all of that. I also know when I was getting drunk in the field and the cops came, I didn't call my parents. I ran and hid in a cornfield for 17 fucking hours. Like, I want to be the parent that my kids go to when things go wrong. And I don't want them to be so afraid of me that when they need me, their fear impedes our connection. And so, because I know in my family system growing up, I was afraid, and not of my mom. Sorry, Mom. I was afraid of my dad, who won't listen to this anyway, so I can say that. And I was that fear of consequence really impacted, and that fear-driven based interaction, especially into my adolescence and early adulthood.
Yeah.
I can remember all the times where I really needed a parent, but I didn't go to my parent because of that fear piece. So I don't know necessarily how to cultivate respect in my kids, because they just hit me in the face and then told me I deserved it because I touched his breakfast plate. So I don't
have
know
other
how to
opportunities.
create respect in the absence of fear, but I'm afraid to create fear
Yeah.
because I want to be their due north, and I want to be their safe space even when they're 25 and 27.
Yeah.
But they'll probably still be hitting me in the face. I don't know.
I hope not.
I hope
That's a
not.
grown man.
I hope not. My
then you'll
9-year-old's
learn to
already
duck.
figured. Yeah, by then I'm gonna take Krav with Deb, and I'll be like, "Let's go." Your old mom just kicked your ass. How's that?
Maybe not fear, but a reverence, you know.
Yeah.
I think fear kind of meant that years ago, but we've kind of gotten away from that definition of fear, but like a reverence. I hope my kids that are young adults now have a reverence for me and their dad. And I really, as challenging as this stage is, because like you have to like allow them to separate and let go and become independent, but it's also really cool to watch their personalities and their identities grow and blossom, and be, you know, especially like if you allow them to have that space and grace to grow, it can be really cool to watch them develop into the people that they're meant to be. So
Yeah, as someone who is in that stage of like, who am I meant to be? Like, I know I've been the eldest daughter forever. Like, my little sister, her life, she had way different parents than I did. Like,
Isn't that fun?
like ridiculous? Like, she's 9 years, or she's like 8 years younger than me and 11 years younger than my brother. And so like my whole life was like I parented her because my parents were busy, and then like they parented me. So that cultivation of fear, like I got mad at my parents then when they didn't put that in my sister, because I was like, you did that to me, and like she's getting away with shit. Like what the hell is that? And so now I'm like, as an adult, I'm growing into like what my identities are and stuff. And so like I'm trying to figure out like, how am I going to parent when I have kids? That's why I'm terrified of having kids right now, because like I'm not ready. Like I still look at my sister and be like, you had it so good. Like mom buys you shit. Like I got nothing. Like what the heck? Like I have to get over that sense like from myself of like the parents that I had, and like giving my mom grace that like she was different. She was a teenager when she had me. Like she was a full ass adult. Had 2 kids who were almost of double digits when she had my sister. So like that grace, that difference in her identity, and like how like right now I'm 25, and like my grandma had 2 kids who were like 8, 9, and my mom had kids who were 8, 9 right now. And so like they never got to be a 25-year-old, like in that sense. Like I get to be that. So like it's cool to hear like from your perspective where you have kids that are finding that, like, and be on this side and know that like hopefully my parents will get to your point at one point where like they respect
I'm
that.
gonna just take that with me and like
Let it sink in.
yes,
Deb.
thank you.
But it's like healing too. Like it's healing even just to sit here and like hear, like you've got grandkids now, you have older kids, you have a young daughter, and like you have younger kids too, that like we're raising people now to like know that their kids don't owe them shit. So like I can get to that. I'll get to that point eventually. But like knowing that like we're literally creating better generations of people, like it just makes it like cool to be a part of something that gets to like do that, I guess.
That's the running joke in our house is how do we do this 10% better than what we got?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very realistic expectation. I think everyone wants to do things 100% better, but that's not realistic. I don't have the physiology for it. I don't have the time for it. There's not enough therapy in the world for it. Like it just, there's all those different barriers. So in my husband and I, 10%, we want to improve upon what we got. And we really believe we did. And to the credit of my parents, I mean, they improved by like 30% by what they got. You know what I mean? When I hear about stories from their childhood, my dad's mom was insane. Like literally insane. We're going to do a grandparent pod. I hope you come back for it. During that, I will tell you, I had a grandma who I loved very, very much. I had a mum that we called Grandma Satan. So, like
Hopefully, I can reclaim that
all
title.
the cousins, Grandma Satan was my mom. So, I mean, all those, so my dad, 50% better than his mom, you know what I mean? So if we can do that 10% better and just give our kids 10% better than what we got, I think we're succeeding as parents and caregivers.
I love that. I love that
Agreed.
idea of that being like, because that's so achievable. Like when we talk, we're like, because I work with a lot of teenagers too, and I'm like, smart goals, everybody. Like, you're specific and like all the different stuff. Like having like that's like realistic. Like I will not be the best parent in the world, but like at least I'm better than what I got like when I was a kid, kind of thing.
So y'all, our time here is winding down. Usually we have time for a lot of questions, but today we just flowed. So sorry, those who submitted questions. We didn't get to any of them today. Usually we do. I'll do better time management next time. We do have a few upcoming pods. So we've got one coming up on dating apps and how do people meet people these days when it comes to romantic relationships, and what is the impact of the apps on the romantic experience. We have one about grandparents coming up. We have a cousins pod coming up. We also have one looking at the therapeutic relationship from the perspective of the client. So we did one a couple of weeks ago, or a couple months ago now, on the therapeutic relationship from the therapist perspective. But many of us as therapists also have been in our own therapy. So we're going to take off our therapist hat and put on our client hat for the next one. So anything left unsaid before we wrap up for today?
One thing.
Yeah,
Make it super quick.
do it.
I was just thinking, and I'm not a parent of an older child, but I feel like when a parent is stuck thinking, what do you do at this stage? When you ask yourself, what did I need at this stage or what did I need in this moment? Go with that. I think that's like the best thing that I tell families that I work with too. Just ask yourself what you needed in that moment and see if you can replicate what you needed or wanted in that moment. Maybe you can get unstuck, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. No, and check in with because that kid that was in that moment still in there.
Right.
Like check in with that kid, see
Right.
what they might be wanting. In
Yeah,
that moment.
that's the plug for the inner wounded child work that
It's like healing your inner
needs to
child.
do, yeah, that everyone needs to do. But yeah,
It's true.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Any questions for the How to Be Happy Hour? It's just Kim at howtobehappyhour.com. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.